Welcome to the Anonymous Andrew podcast. Life and the choices we make, the choices other people make. This podcast explores all things as they relate to dating and romantic relationships. Why we ignore or choose to ignore or miss the red flags. Red flags like gaslighting, cheating, lying, narcissistic behavior, deception, addiction, and so much more. Join me each week as we continue my journey into the modern dating world. With my weekend rants, anonymous guest dating stories, and experts who share their wisdom so we can better navigate the dating terrain. If you are new to the show or have been with me from the beginning, hold on tight for the Anonymous Andrew experience. Greetings and welcome to the Anonymous Andrew podcast, Life and the Choices We Make. So on today's episode, I thought we would dive into something I don't think we quite have covered, at least not in depth, and that is couples therapy. Up until this point, it's been coaches for men, coaches for women, or individual therapy, but today we're going to talk about couples therapy with therapist Wendi Dumbroff. Hope you enjoy the episode, and we'll talk on the other side. Greetings, everyone. Anonymous Andrew podcast, Life and the Choices We Make. And I am back with another episode and another guest episode. And today with me is Wendi Dumbroff. Wendi Dumbroff, and she is a licensed professional counselor in private practice where she specializes in individual, family, couples, and sex therapy. Good evening, Wendi, and welcome.
Good evening, Andrew. Thanks so much for having me here today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to be on my podcast. It's an honor. So, Wendi, tell us, there's a lot right, that first sentence alone, there was a lot. So tell us a little bit about yourself, what you'd like to share with us, and how you got into your practice.
Sure. Yeah, I didn't come to be a therapist by any direct route, by any means. My undergraduate degree is actually in pharmacy. But this was an old interest and something I was interested in, but I was busy. I have two sons. I was busy raising my children and thought I don't know what I thought, because I did finally decide to go back to school when I was in my early 40s, about 20 years ago. And I knew that it would be a regret if I didn't do it. So at that time, I don't know, I just took the plunge. I kind of went to the end of my life and I looked back and I thought to myself, if I don't do this, I'm always going to regret it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as soon as I took one class, started my first class, I mean, I was scared to death. But as soon as I started, the regret went away because I was doing what I really wanted to do. And so I got through graduate school, and then I did some post-grad training at the Ackerman Institute in New York City in family and couple therapy, and really love working with couples, and sex, of course, is such an issue with couples that I thought, I need to know a little bit more about sex. So I followed up with a second postgraduate training in sex therapy. And I'm also a trained teacher of mindfulness and meditation. And that is something, the concept of mindfulness also gets applied to really all of my work, because awareness is so important, right? We can't change anything we're not aware of. And so, people go into these automatic behaviors that we've always done. And when you have the ability to pause and open some space, you get choice. It's the difference between reacting and responding. And so that sort of gets filtered throughout all the work that I do.
I couldn't agree more, because I am I don't know why it took me so long, but at the age of 62, I decided to stop repeating the same mistake, expecting different results over and over again. And as I told you before we started recording, that I'm taking a year off from dating and relationships to be present with myself and to learn about myself and to establish. I didn't know even what self-love was, what it looked like. So and mindfulness. What's it? You mentioned awareness, and I've been told by therapists and other people that I have a self-awareness, but self-awareness doesn't really accomplish anything unless you do something with it. I think you alluded to that.
Yeah.
So let's
Yeah.
talk about that for a minute.
Yeah. No, the Buddhist nun Pema Chodron, she has this great saying. She says, I heard it in one of her talks that I listened to somewhere along the line, and it's always stuck with me. She said, if you find yourself about to go into your usual habitual habits that you don't want to do anymore, she said, do something else.
Mm-hmm.
Do anything. Stand on your head if you have to, but do something different. Yeah. And
Well, yeah. Just as an example, I never, for 20, after my divorce and my second marriage, which was more of a civil union, I just started dating and relationship one after the other, and they just never lasted 6 months, 8 months, a year, 18 months, and then a new one. And it's the definition of insanity, doing the same thing, expecting different results. And I finally decided to take some time off and learn what sitting in my own skin meant. And being self-awareness, I would go into my therapist and I would say to her, yes, I know that I am doing A, B, and C, or X, Y, and Z, but I don't know how to stop it.
mhm.
I don't know how to prevent it from happening again. And so in tune to what you just said is if you're about to repeat the same pattern,
Mhm.
stand on your head if you have to.
Yeah, well, but you have to know that you're about to do it in order to do something different. And I don't like to look at things from I like to look at things from a strength-based view. So I will not call it insanity because it's not insanity. You're quite sane. It's the fact that, unconsciously we learn certain coping strategies where we get triggered by certain things. Usually those trigger buttons are installed early in our lives. Um, we learn certain coping strategies in the families that we grow up in to survive, and we unconsciously we take all that with us, and we take all that's familiar with us, even if it's uh, uncomfortable, even if it's comfortably uncomfortable, right? And so we're kind of on autopilot, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, until you take that pause and you slow down and you say, okay, like for me, food has always been a challenge, right? So, I've struggled with weight my whole life. So for me, like, okay, I'm going to eat that, but well, let me pause before I go eat that. What's happening for me right now? Like, I just had this upsetting phone call, or I'm feeling uncomfortable about myself in some way, and I'm going to soothe that with the very thing that will make me feel worse, right? Ultimately.
Right.
So it is slowing down and just noticing. And I think you mentioned something about self-love and self-compassion is also really important. There's a saying that I learned in my trainings. I didn't make this up, but that if you look at mindfulness as a bird, and the bird has two wings, and one wing is awareness itself, but the other wing is the compassion and love we bring to whatever is being known. And that mindfulness is not complete without that. So it is a non-judging, loving presence. One of my teachers and mentors in the world of mindfulness and meditation, Jack Cornfield, says that calls mindfulness loving awareness, because whatever is being known, if it's sadness, if it's anger, if it's just uneasiness, if it's self-judgment, right?
Mm.
That you're noticing. It's wow. I'm noticing that I'm judging myself really harshly. And it's not a no, I'm not supposed to judge myself, I'm bad. Whew, it's hard to feel that way. It's hard to feel, it's hard to see that I'm putting all that pressure on me, and it's hard to feel like, and this is what it feels like in my body, and this is what it's like to be judging myself so harshly right now. And
Yeah, well, it's interesting. You talked about you struggled with food, which would make you feel better temporarily, but ultimately it was harmful for you. And that's how I struggle with alcohol for the most of my life. I would reach for that short-term fix, and then, of course, it wasn't a fix; it was a disaster. It
yeah,
turned into a disaster. So, and going through the recovery process of alcoholism, you're probably familiar with the 12 steps. It's during that period you learn to love yourself and forgive yourself and forgive and then apologize to other people. Yada yada yada.
mhm.
Okay, let's talk about your practice a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, tell us about exactly what it is you do and or what type of people come to you, couples, all of
Yeah,
it.
I see a lot of couples, I do see families, but uh, less so these days, because so much of what I do is focused on working with couples and individuals as well. Um, I really love working with couples. I feel like that's a place, maybe because I'm trained as a family therapist. It's hard with one person, especially when they're talking about, which of course always happens, some relationship in their life. When I do couples therapy, I have both of the people there,
Yeah.
right? I can say, what's your perspective? What's your perspective? So even when I work with individuals, I always invite them if they would like to bring someone in, and whether it's a friend or a partner or a parent or something like that, if it's appropriate. Not everybody does or wants to, but that's sort of on the table. Um,
Yeah, when I would go to therapy, even let's just keep it recently in the past 9 years of my sobriety, I would always either bitch or complain or moan about my partner and but it's my point of view, it's my perspective, and she was never there until one day my therapist said, let's have her come in. Let's hear her point of view, and I did that 2 times with 2 different people. So it does make a big difference
yeah,
for at least for the therapist too, because you're getting their point of view.
yeah.
And I remember hearing things sometimes. I would look at her and I go, "You never told me that," or "I never knew that." So things get discovered, or you find out things about your partner that they were holding back, or they just never
Hmm.
told you about.
Yeah, never voiced it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the first question I ask when I have a couple in front of me is I say, I want to know from each of your perspectives how you see the issues that bring you here today. And doesn't matter who goes first, but someone, tell me what your thoughts are, and you tell me what your thoughts are. Because for as many people as you have in the room, that's how many perspectives you have. And they may be similar in it, but there may be great differences.
Do you find that the couples that do come to you are they married? Are they in committed relationships, or it's a little mix of everything?
It's a little mix of everything. Sometimes they're dating, um, living together, but having some struggles and wanting to sort of iron things out before they would choose maybe to get married. Sometimes they're just not planning on being married, but they're a couple and they want to, want things to be better between them. Um, I would say most of the couples I work with are married. Um, yeah.
Okay. If I had, this is always 2020 hindsight. I am becoming a believer in, of course the Catholic Church practices this, is before you get married, all couples should go to therapy or counseling or some sort of I forget what they call it in the Catholic Church. Before you get married, you have to go. For those Catholics who
Yeah,
practice that,
yeah.
you have to go to this 12-week thing, or I think it's
Pre
I forget what it's called.
or something.
Pre-Cana, right?
Yeah. I'm not Catholic. I'm Jewish actually,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
have clients who have.
No, but I'm just saying it's something that it's done in some cultures, and I think it should be done
Yeah,
for everybody. That
yeah.
because you don't really know. In my experience, and I'm sure you know this, is that you start dating somebody, or even 6 months in, they're still on their best behavior. They're still not. They're still wearing that mask. They're still showing you the potential or what they want you to see. It isn't until many months or sometimes even a year later when they finally feel comfortable and they drop that mask, they
Mhm.
drop that facade, and then you say, "That's not the," and that's exactly what happened to me.
Yeah.
That's not the person I met 8 months ago or six
Oh,
months ago.
okay.
So if you go to therapy or you go to somebody like yourself,
Yeah.
maybe you could discover that up front,
Hmm. Hmm.
decide whether or not this person is the right person for you.
Hmm.
Has that ever happened to you? That couples come in and then they decide that
Well, yeah, I hear what you're saying, like takes a while to drop the mask. I have a slightly different lens on that. There certainly is that infatuation period, right?
right,
Where, neither you nor your partner can do anything wrong. It's like
right,
just being in love like that, but that doesn't last for
no,
anybody.
no,
I find that there are developmental life cycle points where there can be shifts, and I see it more as um, uh, changes based upon like now you're a family. Sometimes it happens when everything was great and then we got engaged, or everything was great and then we moved in together.
mm-hmm,
Now
yep,
he doesn't want to have sex with me anymore, or everything was great until the first child. And what happens is, or until we were living together and everything was great, and then we got married, and then all of
yeah,
a
I hear that a lot,
sudden,
yeah,
right? But why? Why would you think two people that get along quite well and then they get married, or they get you could you maybe understand it with the workload of a baby, right? That could be, definitely changes things up. But there's other pieces to that. So that's why context is so important. Like, what else is going on in the world? Well, even kids that are going from high school to college, or they're at the end of college and going into the real world, quote unquote, right? Uh, Developmental life cycle changes. I can't tell you how many, even of my friends have said, "Oh my God, my son or my daughter is like experiencing all these like stomach pains," and they're like at the end of their junior year of high school or college, and they may not be consciously thinking, but like, hey, I'm about to enter my last year of high school, and there's a big change coming for me. My whole world's going to change because I'm going to go off to college. I'm not going to be in the same town, in the same bed that I've woken up in my whole life.
right,
Or my parents here, my friends. Am I going to make it okay? Am I going to be okay on my own? Am I going to succeed? And with marriage, it's a developmental life cycle point. Same thing with um, moving in together, having a child, getting married. Sometimes there are shifts when that happens. Also, the idea of being a family now, before we were like these two young hot kids in love,
yeah,
right? And we were just having fun. And now we're a family. Whether that happens for someone unconsciously when they get engaged, whether it's when they get married, whether it's when a child comes. I mean, there's a lot of things when a child comes and seeing a wife as a mother and all of that. But the idea of being family brings in all those family dynamics, all unconsciously, right? And what was your relation? What did you observe in your relationship with your parents? And what was that like? What does it mean to be a mother? What does it mean to be a father? What does it mean to be a husband or wife? There's a lot of unpacking to do around that. Yeah.
Yeah. So what what percentage of your practice are singles or individuals versus couples?
Although I love working with couples, it's a lot more draining, emotionally like draining. It's because you've got two people in front of you.
Yeah.
So I try and keep not every all
Um,
my sessions are not couples. Right now, I'd probably say it's probably about maybe 30% individuals, 20% family, and the rest are couples. Maybe it's a little more heavy on the couples, but something like that.
so when you say family, we're talking children.
Um, Usually adolescents. Some kids are a little younger. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
I tend not to work with really young children.
Sure.
Yeah. Um, I may talk to parents of young children to help them, to work with them and find out what's going on and maybe make some suggestions and maybe meet the child, but I don't really do that much anymore.
Do you? I've been hearing. I besides my podcast, that's all I listen to. I don't even listen to music anymore. My day is filled with my free time of my day is filled with listening to other podcasts. I heard, and this is not something new. Uh, so a couple is engaged for 2 years. They get married and they wait, let's say 18 months, 2 years to have a child. They have a child, and I actually have my son going through this right now. He's recently married and has two children. At a certain point in the marriage, so now you have 2.5 children. So let's just say you have two kids and a dog, and the kids are now 5 and 7, and there's after school projects, or even 8 or 9, and there's after school soccer or whatever.
Yeah, okay.
The husband and wife stop care. I got to choose my words carefully. All the focus goes on the children
Hmm.
and paying the bills and keeping, and the father or the mother, whoever's working or both might be working, focusing on trying to keep the structure of the family. They don't take time to nurture their own relationship that
Yeah.
brought them together. Do you find that to be?
Oh yeah. That's absolutely. Relationships take work and they take effort and they take nurturing. That's the best word. Um, so often I think that shows up when the last child is launched, and oftentimes couples, they look at each other and like, okay, we have nothing to say to each other. Everything has
Right.
revolved around the children, and now who are you? Um, yeah, so that you're absolutely right. It takes effort to, of course, the kids are important. I mean, my God, I raised two sons. Of course, they're important. One is also married now, but no children just yet. Um, but uh, but you can't forget your partner and the person that, like, yeah,
Date night. It's such a it's a simple concept, yet it almost seems like they forget
hmm
how to do that. And I think it, and as we're talking about it, as I listen to it on the podcast and even on paper, you hire a babysitter, or you get grandma, or you get Aunt Julie or something to watch the kids for a couple of hours, and you take your wife, or the wife and the husband go out to dinner, and then they go see a play, a date night where they can spend time together. And I just don't think that's being done enough today. And that's where this one podcast that I was listening to, they actually said that at the 7 year mark and at the 14-year mark are the most common years where affairs started happening.
Mm,
Because at 7 years, that's when the children are 5, 6, 7, and the mother's running around and whatever. And one of them is not getting their needs met.
mhm.
And uh, all of a sudden, a romance develops at work because I'll just pick the husband. He's complaining that the wife never wants to have sex anymore because she's too tired at night. And so he starts complaining to the coworker, and she says, "Oh yeah, my husband is always blah 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 blah." You see, and these outside of the marriage affairs start occurring because of these emotional bonds they're making. But if the husband or wife would just take some time, however they do date night, just to reconnect, and we keep that. If there's any kindle of flame left, keep that flame going.
Keep it going. Yeah, it is definitely useful to nurture the relationship. Date night, however, will not be the panacea when there has become a problem in the relationship. Um, Date night is nice, and believe me, I agree with you. Couples need to tend to each other. Yeah,
Nurture, yeah.
nurture each other and their relationship. And when couples come in, we talked a little bit about today, talking not yet here, but talking about the patterns in relationships and the cycles.
I was just going to get to that next.
Oh, yeah. So I'll sort of segue into that
Good.
because that's when couples have a unuseful cycle between them going on, the way they have co-created their dynamic, and it's always co-created, no matter how bad it looks on one side or the other. If both people are there, it's co-created, right? And that's not something that date night will fix. That's because they didn't have those date nights, perhaps, and they didn't talk and they didn't nurture the marriage in the first place. But what I'm looking for when I sit down with a couple is what happens between them. And by that I mean, let's say I use a model called the vulnerability cycle created by Michelle Schenkman and Mona Fishbane. And it is a circular model that looks at, okay, so we talked about those triggers that can get embedded early in life, right? You were never heard in your home growing up, so you yell louder to be heard. I'm just,
Right.
I'll give
Which
it,
is which has happened, right?
yeah, I'll give an amalgam of things that whatever. So you have one partner doesn't feel heard, so what does that partner do? They pursue the other one. They get loud. You don't hear me. You don't hear me. Maybe then the other partner gets defensive. Maybe that partner always felt blamed growing up in his home, and
Okay.
so he gets defensive and defensive. That's what he feels and what he then does. And the more he gets defensive, the more partner one feels unheard. The more that partner pursues, the more partner two feels
Is that
blamed.
tug?
So it's this. So I look very much at what happens between people and interactionalize it that way. And and I draw the model out, and when they see it, and we do a whole exploration of the families of origin, so you can understand how it makes sense why a person gets so triggered when they feel unheard. It may not look like unheard. It's like, I asked them 20 times to please just pick up that thing at the cleaners for me, and I still don't have it. It's like he just never hears me, or I told him I didn't want to go to that dinner, and he thinks I'm going, and or whatever it is. And so the content on top can vary, but underneath it's the same. If you
Yeah.
drill down at the core, well, he doesn't hear me, or he doesn't value me, or I feel like I'm worthless, he doesn't care, or she doesn't she or, and where she doesn't she thinks I'm a loser and everything I do is wrong, and there's some yearning underneath to be seen, usually when you really drill down, that each other has your back, that you feel like, hey, I'm okay just the way I am right now, and you accept me for what I am. But couples get caught up in this cycle. So when I literally show it to them, then they can say, okay, I see that. Yes, that's exactly what happens. Oh my God, that's exactly it. And nobody can help how they feel, but this is where awareness comes in, right? When you can slow down that automatic coping strategy, automatic pursuit, calm it, maybe say, wow, I'm noticing I'm feeling unheard and I'm about to go into my yelling and screaming. That's not useful. Maybe I can just tell my partner, I'm really feeling unheard by you and this is hard for me. Right now, I kind of just need you to tune in. Can you please do that?
Yeah.
Well, I was feeling really blamed by you. I'm not blaming you. I'm just trying to express to you why I felt sad. And it's a very different conversation. So that person, so in this case, maybe it's two pursuers. Sometimes it's someone who shuts down. So, someone may, you know, go in another room or leave the house when their partner is angry and yelling, or just shut down body and mind. Um, and then all the more their partner feels unheard or
Abandoned.
abandoned, which
Yeah.
is a big one, right? When people have abandonment issues,
Ah.
when it's a person with abandonment issues with someone who shuts down, boy, that's huge. But maybe that person is not trying to abandon them. Maybe they grew up in a home where they, felt smothered. And so when somebody pursues them, they just feel like, oh, get away from me.
Yeah.
It's too much. I need to get free. Um,
I used to try that in any of my relationships, that if I was self-aware that there was a heated discussion coming, or if I was being triggered, it I was, I don't know where I heard this, but it takes two people to have an argument. So I always thought that if I removed one of those people out of the equation, there's no argument. So there were many times in relationships that I would literally just stop and go get my keys and walk out of the house. And sometimes it's just a cooling off period. Just we need to go to your sides and cool off. But sometimes just leaving without saying anything can be worse. Like abandonment. You're abandoning them. So I've learned, if I've done that in more recent times, I need some time to go think about this, and I'll be back and we'll continue the discussion. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. That's the perfect thing to do there.
Okay. I'd like to get. Is there anything else more about cycling? The cycles in the or it says here how the importance a pattern of cycles play in relationships.
Yeah, I think what's the most important thing to know is that it's all in your control, because although you can't help the way you feel and we can't extract our history from our lives, um, we can control what we do. The only thing that anybody can control is what we do.
Right.
So when you slow down, when you turn in and you have the awareness, like, I'm about to do this and it's not going to be useful. Maybe something like you said, I'm a little too heated right now. I need some space, but let's come back in an hour, in 2 hours. I'll let you know, but we will come back to this. Um, and being able to do something different, talking from the vulnerability, right? When statements, when I heard you say X, Y, or Z,
Yeah.
I felt that I felt so unheard. When you left, when you left that time, I felt abandoned. It was just like I felt when my father walked out the door when
Mm-hmm.
I was, 10 years old. Um,
And never came back, because there are times that children have experienced that. Yeah, I can see where that's very triggering
yeah,
to somebody.
yeah.
I'd like to, unless you have some more you'd like to talk about, I'd like to move on to I think the newest part of your practice is where you're working on sexual therapy or sex therapy.
hmm Yeah,
Okay.
not necessarily the newest part. I've been doing it a long time now, but
Oh, okay. I read
yeah,
that you were, okay. I misread that. Oh,
yeah.
but
No,
okay.
no, no. That's okay. That's okay. Uh, but yes, that is something I do. Again, as I said, when you work with couples, there's sex is more often than not an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Not always, occasionally, but it's there. And so sometimes people come specifically around sexual issues. Sometimes they just come for some other issue, couples issue, that maybe there's been an affair, maybe they say communication. Again, that all boils down in the cycle. You have to understand what they mean by communication, because even someone who shuts down, in my opinion, they're communicating. They're just
Mm-hmm.
not communicating
Verbally, yeah.
yeah, in a useful way. So I always ask, well, how's intimacy? And, oh, yeah, no, that's not so great
No.
either. Or sometimes they come for sex therapy and there's so much else going on that, yeah, I'm not surprised you're not having sex because you're always yelling and screaming at each other.
Yeah.
Um, so, and yes, so sex is a whole other exploration that I take with couples if they are wanting to do that. And what I do is I do a sexual and relational history with each member of the couple. I do that separately, right? As long as they're okay with it, I do it. Even when I work with couples, I always do some individual sessions as well. But the way I like to work is that I say to them, I'd like our individual sessions to be private to the extent that you tell me it's private. So I may ask you, is there anything you've said today that you wouldn't want to come back to the couples therapy? And as long as both of the partners are on board with that, that's the way I like to work. And that way they know that I might hold a secret that one of them doesn't know. The worst one, of course, being, yeah, no, there's an active affair going on.
Yeah. I can only
And
imagine the burden.
yeah,
Oh, God.
that's something I think couples therapists
I have to ask because if I was you're trained, I'm not, but if I was in your shoes and so the husband and wife come in and they're having sexual problems and then you see the husband separately and the wife separately and the wife comes out to you and says, yes, I'm having sex with my neighbor. Or even worse, I've heard this recently, that with my husband's best friend, I've heard this.
yeah, yeah,
And then they come back together, something that the husband doesn't, and they're both sitting in front of you.
yeah,
To me, it just might be my personality. I almost want to just tell them.
yeah.
So, but you can't, right? Because you took a vow of I'll keep the secret.
Right.
How do you work through that for yourself?
It's hard. And what I may do at that point is spend a little more individual time with the person having the affair.
Okay.
And it may be a situation like, look, yes, there's this person in my life. It's on the side. It's been there for 20 years. I'm not giving it up, but but my marriage is important to me. If it's something like that, but if it's something that's actively going on, which is more often the case, then I need to work with that person. Like, what are you wanting here? On the one hand, you're coming to therapy, but on the other hand, you're, leaving, and the person that you're communicating with and talking to is this person who's outside of the marriage. There's really three people in the relationship.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Just like if someone could be having an affair with alcohol or an affair with some other substance or an affair
Gambling, drugs.
with gambling. Yeah. So there's a third, and how are we gonna work with that? And I've said to people, I'm not really sure what you want from me, how I can help you, and I'll tell them, it's the couples therapy isn't going to work. Save your money, really, save your money if until you get this straight for yourself, or let's do some individual work, or do it with a different individual therapist, so you can figure out what you want. But I'll be very frank with people that I don't think it's going to be.
Two thoughts came up. If I could remember them. For me, in my latter years, of course, when I was younger, I was dumb and stupid and involved with alcohol and drugs, but I don't believe in having an affair. Whether you're in a marriage or you're in a committed relationship, if you feel the need to go outside the relationship, once you've committed, so even if I'm dating somebody for 2 years, like my last relationship, and we sat down with each other and said, yes, I'm committed to you, and I will only have sex with you, and I will only see you, and maybe some jewelry exchange just as a symbol or whatever. I always feel as if I have to go outside to get my needs met, I might as well end the relationship, or at least go to the other person and say, I feel the need to go outside and have an affair because on A, B, and C I'm not getting, and at least give them the opportunity to, I should say, not fix it, but whatever. And the second thing, of course, I knew I was going to forget. So, but it will come back to me. Yeah. But in the meantime, so how if you see a couple come in that, let's say they're married and they're struggling and they're married 8 years, they have 2 kids, 3 kids, but the marriage is really almost at the end.
Yeah.
How do you know, or when do you know, and when do you tell them that? Because I think you said a few minutes ago, sometimes it might not be worth, I don't think you said it, but it might not be worth saving. How did you say it?
I
You didn't say it that way, but
No, I think I hear what you're saying. I don't ever make that decision. That's not my decision to make. It's not my life.
okay.
People don't, there's 3 outcomes really to therapy. People can make change that is more useful. They can end the marriage, or nothing can change and they can carry on.
Carry on.
So it's not for me to say whether they should or shouldn't be in the relationship. I can kind of hold the light in the swamp and say, here's what I see, here's the big picture, here's what's happening between the 2 of you. I noticed that it's been hard for you to do something different, Joe. What do you think that's about? Are you, what's going on there? Maybe I would ask Joe that in an individual session. Joe, your wife has asked you so much that she just needs you to come to her and offer her some kind words and hold her, and after an argument, and it seems that you don't seem willing to do that. What do you think that's about, right? So I can, as I said, hold the light in the swamp, but ultimately it's not for me to say.
It's their decision.
It's their decision. It's their lives. I wouldn't want anyone to tell me what to do.
Oh yeah, no, and I would never. I would hope there would be never a therapist that would look at a couple and say you're doomed. Don't even bother.
Yeah.
I always go back to podcasts. I listen to a lot, and
Yeah.
I've heard that there are just some relationships that are just so far either so far gone, or that the couple are not willing to do the work. They may see there's a problem financially. It might be better off for them to stay together, because and especially I think a lot of couples do that. They stay together for the kids and for financial reasons, because to split up is 2 different homes, lawyers, all that kind of stuff, and it's a lot of money. So let's just stay together. But that sometimes it's miserable home life for the kids and for so yeah, they all have to be on board with. So how do you handle, so a couple comes in, I'll just pick a gender, the wife is done, he never, I think he's having an affair, he's never home on time, he never takes my car and gets the oil changed, blah 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 blah, I'm done with him. And he, on the other hand, is, I will do better, I'm not having an affair. In other words, one wants out and one doesn't.
Yeah. Well, it takes 2 people to make a relationship. It
Yeah.
only takes 1 to end a relationship. And sometimes that's the case. Sometimes somebody ends the relationship for whatever reason. If somebody is being honest and they're just accusing them of something, then, again, some individual sessions. Also, just because I offer that I will hold the secret doesn't mean people are necessarily going to be honest with me about that.
Correct.
Certainly, I've certainly found that out. I've certainly seen that happen.
So have I.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, so have I. Okay. I'm just looking over your bio to see if there's anything else. Okay, here's a good question. Are there benefits in seeking couple sex therapy even if the struggles in the relationship are not severe?
Oh, well, if you are dissatisfied with your sexual life, and your sexual connection, absolutely. There may be people who say, we have sex about 3 times a year, and that's fine for us. Then you don't need to go to sex therapy.
Right.
There's no one truth. There's no normal. But if it's like we only have sex 3 times a year, and I'd really like to have sex more, I love my partner, I want to be closer to them, then check it out. Then
Yeah.
then it's something that may be helpful. And all the better if the relationship is otherwise in a good place, to rekindle the romantic side, the intimate side of it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Um, you are based on the East Coast. So,
Right. Yeah.
since prior to COVID, there used to be something called in-person therapy where
Yeah.
you would drive your car to an office,
Yeah.
park, go in and sit down with the therapist.
Yeah.
COVID changed all that. And now, even after COVID, many therapists are doing everything virtual. How do you conduct your practice?
I am hybrid. I kept my office throughout COVID, even though
Good
I,
for you.
even though I
Good.
didn't utilize it at all. Um, but you know, I'm hybrid. So now I go in about 2 days a week for part of the day, and the rest is virtual. But I
But
do,
you do see patients
I
in.
do, yes.
Okay.
And sometimes I think especially with some people, it's just better. And some people really prefer in person. Sometimes I do, as you said, some people some therapists have stayed virtual. It's a whole lot easier. There's a whole lot less downtime in between clients. You take a break, you can throw in a load of laundry or the dishes in the sink, or you don't have to worry about packing lunch the night before. You just go downstairs and make yourself some lunch or a smoothie or whatever it is you want. And
Yeah.
it's easier when your commute is 15 seconds. I start on the days that I'm not in my office in the morning. I'll start as early as 7 a.m., but I don't wouldn't regularly do that if I had
Yeah.
to go in person. Um, so I like having the hybrid though, but I can understand the pull to inertia.
Yeah. So does being this is kind of a silly question because I know the answer to this. Being virtual can also widen your range of people. So if
Yes. Well, to the extent of the state that you're licensed in. So
correct.
I'm
Okay.
only licensed in New Jersey, so I have gotten calls from like Hawaii even, but or around the country, but I can't, unfortunately, I can't even really do New York because even though I'm 20 miles outside
Miles away,
New York City,
Manhattan.
I can't do New York City, but I could see someone who's in South Jersey because I'm licensed in New Jersey. Yeah.
This may just seem like a simple like I should know the answer to this. Can somebody drive from New York to New Jersey and then you
Yes.
could treat them? Okay, you
Yeah.
just can't treat them virtually if they're in New York.
Correct.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Wendy, wow. I learned a lot today. Thank you. Is there any parting thoughts, wisdom that you'd like to leave with us? And then we'll say goodbye. You can tell us where we can find you.
Uh, one thing I always like to offer is that when we are speaking with our partner or our children or our friends, really anytime somebody is sharing something with us, to listen to hear, not to
Yes.
respond.
I
So to
couldn't agree
really
more.
just be present, reflect back what you hear. Wow, that was hard for you. That made you sad. Oh, that was such a happy experience. Wow, I'm so glad you shared that with me. Listen to hear, not to respond. You'll have your turn to talk about it. Um, Yeah.
I don't know where I heard this, but over the past 5 years, I heard it somewhere that you and your partner sit down and you get a real timer, like one of those old-fashioned hourglass timers,
Oh, yeah.
and whether it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and then one person gets to go, and they turn the timer over, and they can start whatever issues they would like to talk about,
Yeah.
and then the other person has to validate. He or she repeats back to that person. Okay, I heard that you didn't like this, and I heard you say that this, and then he gets to go. It's kind of I don't know where I heard that, but I think it's a fantastic idea because it does get the other person to be validated, and that you're heard. You still may not agree. The whole idea is that you don't have to agree with them. But I did hear that you say that you don't like when I leave my socks on the floor when I get home, you know, something like that. So,
Right. Yeah.
okay. Wendy, where can we find you if we're in the state of New Jersey or we want to travel to the state of New Jersey?
You can find me at my website, which is wendydumbroffTherapy.com. And all my information, my phone, my email, it's all there. It's Wendy with an I.
Okay.
WendyDumbroff.com.
I'll put all of that in the show notes, and I'll make sure that they can, and I'll put a little note there. You must live in New Jersey. No, I'll leave that out. Wendy, thank you so much for taking your time out on a Friday night to spend some time with me, and I wish you the best, and maybe we'll have you back someday.
Oh, that'd be lovely. Thank you so much, Andrew. I appreciate your openness and your easy manner, and this was lovely.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Wendi Dumbroff for joining me on this episode. Couples therapy. It's been around for a long time. I remember my parents went to therapy, and gosh, that was back in the 70s. And for them, I think it worked because they were together until death did them part. If you are enjoying this podcast, please stop and leave me a review. If you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, down below there's a place where you can leave me 5 stars and let me know how I'm doing. And maybe share this with a friend, somebody you might know that could use some help in this area. And if you are going to get into a relationship and commit, I ask you to just take some time before you dive into that commitment. Is this person really the right person for me? Thank you for listening, and until next time, Anonymous Andrew. Ciao.